Alright, my name is Sean Fallon, and you're listening to episode 12, Futurama. Welcome to From First to Last. Where everybody knows. Hello again, and welcome again. My name is Sean Fallon. This is From First to Last. My guest today, he's a writer, he's a movie critic, he's a man from the world of tomorrow. He's Jason Bending Ooi. How are you today, Jason?
Hi, good.
Yeah, I tried to Bending's your middle name. Tried to make it work.
Yeah.
What show have you chosen for us today?
Futurama.
Futurama. Okay. Quick stats for Futurama. Futurama ran for 140 episodes, and it ran from 1999 till 2013. With like a 5-year gap in the middle when there was no Futurama. So yeah, 1999 to 2013. What is your experience with Futurama?
So Futurama, like as a kid, it was like the show for me. So it was kind of like a guilty pleasure where I would just come home from school every day. Like when I started watching it, I think I was in 6th grade or something, and it would just be something that I'd like watch while I would do homework or like, watch with my brother and stuff. And yeah, like not even in order, just like whatever shows popped up on the television. Yeah, no, it was always just like I tried like The Simpsons and I tried like Family Guy, and those never really did it for me. But it's weird because Futurama always hit that sweet spot where like I found it really funny, but it also had like the cinematics and like the drama to make me feel and actually care about the characters more than some of the other shows.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think it didn't have that sort of family dynamic where you were stuck with like suburban plot lines. It was like, with The Simpsons, like the Halloween specials where they sort of break away and they do something really big. I always felt like Futurama was that every week.
Yeah, and the suburban kind of like plot, like that was exactly what I was trying to get away from, like when I watched television. So it's really interesting how like I ended up falling right into like Futurama's lap.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Like in the sense of like in England, Family Guy and Futurama started on the same night. Like I remember it being that was the thing. Like I think there was an episode of The Simpsons, then it was this huge event that Futurama had started, and then afterwards it was Family Guy. And it's sort of because of that, it started this weird thing of you were a Family Guy fan or you were a Futurama fan. Like you couldn't be both. Which made no sense at all, and sort of the shows obviously had the weird thing of being quite similar in the sense that like they were very popular, then both got cancelled, then both got brought back, but obviously Family Guy inexplicably continues to be on TV while Futurama's been cancelled. Are you a big fan of like sci-fi stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I always found Futurama really like innovative in like the science fiction realm as well. And I think compared to the other two shows, like you have these 22-minute animated television shows, but I found that Futurama's like had a lasting impact. Like instead of the day resetting every time, like every episode, you would kind of get a little bit more, and like like stuff would carry through and kind of make a difference in the later episodes.
Yeah, there was definitely that. Yeah, like a sort of serialization thing, like Leela and Fry, like their sort of love story. It did sort of move in very slow pieces, but it did move. It wasn't sort of like unrequited love forever. Eventually, they did end up together and all that. And the whole thing with the I can't think of like the Fry's. Yeah, Nibbler and the irregular brainwaves and all that, and the baddie brains and all that. So what happened for me was I used to watch it on TV, and then when I went to university, I bought the 4 box sets of the first 4 seasons, and used to just watch them in rotation all the time, just like constantly watching them, and listening to directors' commentaries, watching deleted scenes, watching animatics, just really geeky stuff, just getting into it, like, and absolutely adored it. And I did like there was that thing of. Like, I'm a big fan of Doctor Who, and that's again like another like sci-fi thing, but they never really go for like hard science with Doctor Who. It's always sort of like, oh, we've got to recombobulate the neutron flow. It's all gibberish, like, but you're just like, okay, this is a fun show, and everything is all spacey and science and time and stuff. But some episodes of Futurama went mathematics was a huge part of the show sometimes. Like,
Oh yeah, like you hear about like scientists like taking stuff from the show, right? Like developing like black hole theory or something like from parts of the show or something. Like was
yeah,
that a
no,
thing?
it's absolutely fascinating. Like, and I remember watching. It was on one of the DVDs, and I think it was David Cohen and one of the writers giving like a lecture, and Cohen was talking about like the writing process, and the other writer was like a theoretical scientist in his day job, and he was talking about, oh well, that episode. I think it was Time Keeps on Skipping, the one with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And he sort of said, like, no, the principles we're talking about, and sort of started, like, doing theory on the board, on this big chalkboard. And it was like, oh, God, this is fascinating that they've actually managed to do what you said before. Like, it's a funny show, but it's very, very clever. Very, very smart stuff, like. And also had that thing more so than The Simpsons and Family Guy, where they could have big space drama, I guess,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
And it was like literally limitless. Like these
Yeah.
other shows, they were so grounded to reality. Like even in how like crazy it gets, like this one could draw from anything to kind of find humor in, and that's never really been done before, aside from like maybe Doctor Who, which is
Yeah.
also a show that I got really into, but only like the later seasons because there
Yeah,
were just so
same.
many.
Yeah, that's it. That's a very hard show. I went back to the start and started watching Doctor Who from the 1963 stuff, and it's a slog. It's very tough. I didn't get very. I got to like the third Doctor, and then I was like, why am I doing this? This is going nowhere. I'm not that guy. I'll stick with like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 at the
Yeah, and
end. Like,
it's the same reason I was never able to get into like Star Trek or anything.
yeah, same.
Like Futurama is just so much lighter than the other two.
Yeah,
It's
and that's it. Well, it's funny, like, I've got it in my notes, like, it's so weird, like, what you just said there. It's funny that Simpsons has lasted longer when The Simpsons is so restricted to, like, those plot lines of, oh, how is, Homer and Marge's marriage on the rocks? How does Lisa feel an outsider in the family, and so on and so on. Whereas, like, Futurama, you could have aliens, you could have time travel, you could just travel into space.
Yeah.
All you had to do was just have Farnsworth come in and go, good news, everyone, I've invented this machine that does this thing, and then, you can just expand from there.
Yeah, just see how like far your imagination, like the imagination of the writers takes you. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that was always, yeah, I mean, that whole thing of just when you're watching the show and just the mad concepts they'd bring in. And they'd always they'd always double down on it. It wouldn't just be like, oh, we've created this cool little device. It would be like, we've created this cool little device, and then we've added this extra little thing to it. Like, we'll get to it eventually, but the last episode with the time button's cool by itself, but then they add in all that extra color about how if you press the button and you've been out of the time cave, you get ripped apart, or it's only 10 seconds, then it takes 10 seconds. Just all those little cool bits, just to really hammer it home that they've given it some thought. No, I do love that.
Another thing I really love about it is even that, like, even though it's sci-fi, it kind of reflects our time, like, really well. Like, I remember that episode about, like, the robosexuals, like, especially.
Yeah.
Like, kind of helping me understand, like, in a funny way. Like, I was, like, what, like, 12 or 13, and helping me understand, like, what that like lifestyle was all about, and like that kind of stuff. It's kind of interesting, like satire as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was they did have that awesome thing of being able to sort of take an event now and straight line it to the future, and just sort of say, like, oh yeah, this is how people are going to look back on this in 1,000 years, and stuff like that, which I think is really good.
The evolution episode.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's sort of that sort of genius thing to be able to put so many removes from the actual event to make it satire that you can spot it, but you don't need it to understand the episode. Whereas, like, you have, like, again, to compare it to The Simpsons, like, The Simpsons would have to do pretty straightforward satire of something. And obviously Family Guy wouldn't do satire.
Yeah.
They would just say, isn't it weird that Trump could be president? And then cut away to an image of Trump giving an actual speech, and then cut back. Like, okay, I guess that's a joke. Move on.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Family Guy.
Not a fan of Family Guy either. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the first episode, rewatching it, what did you think of it?
Okay, so I think rewatching it from like now, it's only now kind of hit me that like how kind of terrifying the whole situation is, you know?
Yeah.
Like waking up 1,000 years in the future, like that's whole spiel Fright gives where he's like, oh, my friends and my family, like my loved ones, they're all dead, you know? And then he goes
Yeah.
woohoo, and like it's still kind of sad, you know? Like the
Well,
idea that like you kind of get a fresh start, but yeah,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, like a fresh start, but at
at
what
what
cost?
cost?
Like, yeah.
And yeah, especially how kind of at the end too, like when they get the new, when he finds out that he's still in the mix of being like a delivery man, and like now he's kind of happy about it. Like you kind of get introduced to Fry as this like doltish character, but at the same time you can't help but connect. I guess
Yeah.
it says something that like in the future, 1,000 years in the future, like the everyman still exists and you can still connect to him, you know?
Mm.
And yeah,
Yeah,
like
that
it's just a
is.
very interesting concept and kind of heartwarming too,
Yeah, no,
you know?
that is good. Like, I think they were very clever to not just make a show set in the future. You need Fry to be you, to be like you, who's going to go, well, why is this like this? And someone will be like, what? You don't know that people advertise in your dreams? You know, and you need that constant sort of thing. And it also helps that Fry is sort of, that nice level of sweet and stupid.
Yeah.
And another thing that the show did you really well, like that, like you say, that exact scene you just said there, where he's like, "Oh, my family, my friends, my job, all gone, woohoo." The show will then later on reassess that and sort of, because that episode where he finds out about his brother,
Oh my
his
god, my
brother's
favorite
stolen his
episode.
net, yeah, and then they really managed to take that sort of throwaway jokey line and then dig into it and have that episode and the episode with Seymour the dog.
Man.
That's still I've only ever watched the episode once. I couldn't go back into that. I just couldn't do it again. Like it was too much for me.
Yeah, I feel you, dude. Like I'm crying every like it's crazy how this show gets me to like cry. It's a
Yeah.
comedy about like an idiot in the future and it's just crazy emotional.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do that really well in the sense of they manage to like when they go for those big like heartstring pulling plot lines, they really go for it. Like the Seymour one. Well, there's like in the first episode, there's quite a few cool little things that look like one thing, but will eventually, when you watch the show, become another. Like Leela's whole thing of like, oh, I'm the last of my alien species, but she's saying that line while she's underground where the mutants live, and obviously that's going to pay off later, which is again another fantastic thing. And yeah, no, it's interesting because the first episode is very entertaining and very good, but it's a lot of putting pieces in place.
Yeah, and like oh, like for example, like going back and watching this, you finally see like I finally got the chance to like look for Nibbler in that
Yeah,
first episode,
same.
and you see him like twice, I think, right? Like
Yeah,
his
yeah.
shadow, and then his like oh my god, that's so cool. Like the fact that they've planned this like years in advance, and like yeah, just shows the foresight that these creators really had.
Yeah.
And also like yeah, like we were saying earlier, how the show is serialized, how like some stuff does matter in the future, like so you can't really just watch this haphazardly. You have to like if you get more satisfaction from watching it in order. Like they really set up a lot of the like the character arcs in the show. Like there are kind of like these small arcs that go beyond the episodes, like as like a season. Yeah, like even when you set up Leela like to be the first person that like Fry sees, and it's or like one of the first people, and yeah, just the fact that they're like seeing each other and how like they eventually go into both of their backstories, and you kind of see them as different people like from that.
Yeah, very much
It's
so. No, it's like you say, it's very clever in the sense of their job in that first episode is like, okay, we've got to sell the concept, be funny, introduce enough of the main characters to get through. But it's good that they didn't just sort of rest on that. Like having the Nibbler shadow and all that, and sort of being like, right, we're going to put that here, and we've got a big because that is sort of the main plot line, isn't it? That sort of reappears every now and again. That's like the big epic thing of like the giant brains being the baddie and Nibbler being such a weird character, and then having that whole I absolutely love the character of Nibbler when it's like beep 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 and then it's like hello Fry, and that always cracked me up. Like I just couldn't handle that, how cute he was with that voice. Loved it. It's just amazing that like you say, that they've seeded that in the first episode. Like they've had the confidence to say no, let's put it in. Doesn't matter if it doesn't go anywhere, but if it does go somewhere, we've got this cool plot line.
Yeah. Did anybody notice, like at first, like the Nibbler shadow or anything?
I don't know, because I think it's interesting because I think 1999 sort of predates probably predates like Reddit and Twitter and all that. Whereas there was a whole thing I read the other day with Dan Harmon, the guy who made Community and Rick and Morty, and he was saying like nowadays it's very hard to do that sort of thing, like to sort of try and seed a plot early. He said because the internet is just like a render farm. It's just, you know, if you had that scene now, people would be like, what's this shadow? And they'd kind of like have it analysed, and the second the Nibbler character was introduced, someone would be like, hey guys, I might have noticed something weird, and they would have pointed it out, and instantly it would have just unfolded.
Yeah, and then at the same time you have like Game of Thrones fan theories, which just go so over the top, and like, yeah, Arya's like 7 different people. What?
Yeah, that is fascinating to sort of like each week, you know, Game of Thrones comes out, and then it's like, check out this fan theory. Hoda is actually a horse. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Which is quite incredible. And I just love. I'm bad for this. Like, I know what clickbait is, but at the same time, if I see a headline that's like, "You won't believe this new Game of Thrones fan theory," I'm like, "Oh, okay, you gotta click." And
what is it now?
Yeah, no, okay, well, what you got for me? And I click on it and read it and be like, "Oh yeah, Arya's actually that guy, the main dude disguised as her, and she's actually," and like, oh, why did I put myself through this?
The scary thing is that like it kind of makes sense if you turn off your brain. Like the evidence makes sense if it only like it weren't so batshit insane. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there is that thing of like, yeah, they really put the work in and like done the research to put together this theory, which is insane. It's conspiracy theory level madness. But I think, yeah, if that kind of thing had been around when Futurama would have come out, someone would have worked it out. Somewhere like there would have been a Reddit thread, you know, Futurama theories, and someone would have got it. I think they managed to just predate that by a few years to get the reveal, which is cool.
Yeah.
So
and that the show starts at the same time, like in 1999, I think is really funny. Was it like, okay, see, because I was 1 in 1999. So as somebody like at the time, like, did it reflect like the culture at all? Like was it like a Y2K kind of thing? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it was nuts. Like I would have been like 15. No, yeah, 15 during like 1999, and I remember it being a whole thing of like doomsday theories and people on TV talking about how we were going to survive Y2K, and everyone was releasing songs that had the word millennium in them, so they'd all get played on New Year's and all that. And then because it makes no sense, because obviously on the day Australia has its New Year 12 hours ahead of England, so they had their New Year and nothing happened. And then, obviously, it just went hour by hour across the world and nothing happened, and then nothing happened.
Yeah, Y2K is one of those crazy fan theories, you know? Like...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's like a life fan theory. But it was funny, because you did have on, like, the BBC, like, live feeds of, like, the Y2K feed, and it would be, like a bunch of like, presenters in a room, and they were just sort of like, oh, we've had reports of someone's phone stopped working and all this, but... People were expecting like planes to fall out of the sky and all that, and just obviously nothing happened. But there was that just feeling in the air of like, oh, this is going to be a huge party. But at the same time, is this going to be the end of the world? Who knows?
Yeah, and Futurama kind of plays off that kind of well, I think, you know?
Yeah, it does. I think it's good that with it being like the millennium and that being like, like to get a little bit philosophical, like that's Fry's like rebirth. You know, it's the new century, but it's like the newer century, like, and that's his moment to sort of reinvent himself and pull it all back, which I think is good.
Yeah.
The last sort of note that I've got here is the heads in jars thing. Very elegant solution to the fact that they couldn't have like celebrities keep coming on the show.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a very
the pop culture references.
Yeah, like I do wonder how early on they had to sort of put that in the notes of like, well, if the show's big and we want famous people, how are we gonna have them play themselves, you know? And then someone's just had the, you know, oh, we'll do heads in a jar, and it's just, and they ran with it and it worked. Like,
yeah, we'll talk about the Twitter poll later, right? But that's like exactly what I chose. I think it's not only such a cool invention, but how it ties in with the plot and how like they put episodes around like clones from the past and like people from the past. You know, like the Lucy Liu episode.
Yeah, God, I'm actually wearing a t-shirt now with a picture of Zoidberg that says, tell it to the claw. Because there is that thing of like, where he does like, you know, the finger snap with the claws. It's just like, tell him, Dr. Z. And that just absolutely. I remember watching that and it being a thing where I had to like pause it and just get all the laughter out before I watched it because it was just one of those things that just tickled me. Oh, yeah,
Lots of
so
moments
good.
like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That episode for the heads thing is fantastic, and then also the fact that Richard Nixon is like the big bad guy is genius. I think that was a great idea to just have his disembodied head be like the president of Earth and the main villain. You
Yeah.
know? No, that's fantastic. Okay, so watching the first one, and then this was actually well, I should like full disclosure. I watched the first four seasons obsessively. Then I watched the four movies and I was a bit cold on them because I thought there was sometimes the humor in it. It was weird. Like sometimes they were quite cruel, which was weird. Like there was sort of like a cruelty to its humor, like when Hermes gets his head cut off, so the wife instantly leaves him, and just stuff like that. I was like, oh, I feel like it's just a little bit mean spirited now. But then I watched a few episodes of like I guess it would have been season 6, and then I think I must have because I for like when I was 21, I moved to Thailand and I lived in Thailand for a couple of years as an English teacher. Then I went to Korea, then Istanbul.
Where haven't you lived, man?
Yeah, I've done pretty well. I've done well for myself. And at some point, I think Futurama just got lost between two countries, and I just never watched it. So this was actually the first time that I'd watched this final episode,
Oh.
which was and it's one of them. Like I watched it, and 3 seconds into it, I was like, I need to go back and watch everything because I'm right back. I'm right back in
Yeah.
this. I absolutely love it.
Oh, I remember people like didn't like the new seasons or something like when it first came out, and I thought they were great. Like there were a lot of really good episodes in like the later seasons, and I watched them like kind of so much to the point where like I don't know like which are new and which are old anymore. Like it's kind of just like one
Yeah, so
long
that's-
season for me, you know?
That's good though, because I mean there are some shows like I don't know if you ever watched like Arrested
Oh no,
Development.
I haven't.
Like the first 3 seasons are fantastic, and then the new like the Netflix one is shaky, and it's almost like it's a different because the new season had the problem of because all the actors had gotten quite famous, they couldn't get them all in the same room at the same time, so each episode has to focus on one character, and it just doesn't have the legs, you know. So it has that sort of there is like a big demarcation where you're like, oh, this is seasons 1 to 3, and this is 4. Like if you were just turned on the TV and you saw an episode, you can just go, oh, this is old or new. It's good that Futurama has that thing of just doesn't matter, you know. You can dip in. I know, obviously, as we said before, it's good to watch it all in order for serialization, but it's also good that you can go right. These are the Fox episodes. These are the Comedy Central episodes, but you can't work it out on site. If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
And yeah, full disclosure, I haven't seen anything but the first and the last episode in like 3 or 4 years cuz
That's good.
yeah, cuz I've kind of moved away from television like recently, you know, with the whole movie thing.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'm starting Twin Peaks though. That one's great.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, you'll have a weird emotional experience with that show. It's a cruel mistress.
Yeah. All right, so back to Futurama.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that last episode, yeah. Well, what did you think of it then? Rewatching it after so many years away.
Okay, so I remember watching the season finale, like I think live when it first came out. I forget when that was. When was that?
2013.
Yeah, 2013, pretty recently. Okay, so yeah, it's been like 2 years since I've seen this. But
Oh, yeah.
I remember watching it live and being really, really sad. Like I remember having an actual like emotional response to it. And I don't know if that was because
Yeah.
the show was over or like, you know, because I just like rediscovered it when the new seasons came out and started watching it again. Or if that was because like the actual plot that happens in that last episode, like the culmination of Fry and Leela's romance, and you know, it's actually a really heartbreaking episode, you know?
It is.
Like them always like Fry dies like 30 times in that episode, violently too.
Yeah.
All the other characters die.
Yeah.
Like it's a really dark episode. And I remember just
Yep.
thinking, like watching it now, that like 22 minutes really wasn't enough to like go through that. You know, it felt
Yeah.
really rushed. Yeah.
It does for how much stuff happens. Like you said, like how many times Fry dies and all the mad stuff that happens. It's incredible that it is like 22 minutes long. It feels like it should be a good hour.
Yeah, and like the scene where they get married and they kind of like they go through Earth together, right? And like just like together. That's like a 2-minute scene, right? And it feels like it's kind of yeah, it's very rushed. Like I still kind of felt stuff, but not as much as I think I did like before. you know.
Yeah.
Now I was just like, oh, I want to see like more of this. This is so like heartwarming and endearing and like, yeah.
Yeah, it is that thing of like, if you, because I don't really watch that many like 22-minute shows. Like there aren't like that. I don't really watch any sitcoms now. Like I don't. There's nothing out there I'm into. Like I guess 22 minutes would just be, I guess, like BoJack Horseman and Broad City. Probably that would be it. So when you do sit, if you get into that thing, if you're just watching like Game of Thrones and hour-long TV shows, if you watch a 22-minute show, it is like that. Just oh, okay, it started and then it ended. You know, that was it. Like it's wild. I will say I absolutely I absolutely loved the episode because I think Futurama does so well with like time travel stories. Like they're really good at they're creating these sort of like time travel ideas, like the what if machine and the Harlem Globetrotters one with the black hole, and then this with just the time button, which again is a weird one. Like when that was introduced, I was like, how did they wait 140 episodes to get to the time button? Like that idea must have come up pretty early because it's such a good idea.
Yeah.
And I was actually sort of I've got in my notes. My wife was in another room and she could hear me and she was like, well, why do you keep shouting, press the button? Because there was just so many times I was like, no, stop wasting time.
Oh yeah, like when it turns green and they wait like 1 or 2 seconds to press it.
They're like, oh, Fry, you're not going to make it back to the top. Press. You know. And obviously that whole sequence where he presses it, but he's not quite at the top, so he just falls again and keeps falling and falling and falling. That's like Twilight Zone horror stuff of like, because I as soon as it happened, I started just like trying to calculate in my head. I was like, well, what's gonna happen? How's he gonna save himself? Is this gonna happen? And then just couldn't work it out. And the next minute, like you say, it was just like splat, splat, splat.
Yeah, gruesome. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely incredible. No, I really I really had a reaction to it.
Yeah, and they set up like the possibility of maybe coming back in the future, like with that last line.
Yeah.
But it also works so well as like a finisher for like an entire series, you know, and it's really sweet. Yeah.
It's good, and it has that sort of like Mobius strip thing because like technically you could say that, you know, they fix the button at the end and it goes back and it actually resets all of their timelines, so they go back to the pilot.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then you just watch the whole show again and you just reset. And stuff.
Yeah. Wait, am I crazy for thinking that the show does time travel really well? Like even in the craziness of the world, like it always sets up its time travel with like restrictions and like.
Yeah.
You know, so that it makes sense, like, when you think about it, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, there is that sort of thing of, like, I mean, sci-fi concepts are so hard to like, a new concept, like, because you can see it done really well. Like, I think with Doctor Who, they do have that thing of, like, they set, like, time travel rules, but then they break them constantly.
Yeah.
You know, there is that sort of the constant thing of, like, oh, you know, you can't alter a fixed timeline. Oh, yeah, okay, you can here. You know, or you can't do this. Oh, you can for this.
Yeah.
Well, I think Futurama was always very strict of like, Farnsworth would come out, good news everyone, I've created X, Y, and Z. Be careful because if you do this, this, and this will happen. And inevitably that thing would happen, but you'd know the rules around it. Like I know a big problem that people had with the movie Inception was the fact that the rules kept getting added on and changed as the movie goes along. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a problem with that. I absolutely love that
same.
film. But there was, I know, like, well, actually, talking about Sean from No Totally again, he hates it because he's like, no, the central concept, the technology there's too many things that keep getting added and changed as the film goes on and the rules keep changing. Again, don't know if I 100% agree.
Yeah, me neither.
But, yeah, I mean, if you're paying attention, so, you know, Sean, if you're listening to this, mate, get your head together. But yeah, I think Futurama always did that very well, like you say, to sort of have its strict rules and then have the fun of breaking them and then having the consequences.
Mm-hmm. And they always...
Which they do very well.
Yeah, and they, like, with the 10 seconds in the past, like, button, right? Like, they have that kind of safe zone inside of that time. I forget what it's called.
Time cave.
The time cave. It was a cave that protected them from... Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have this time cave that kind of, like, lets them sit outside of it and like examine what happens, and like, you know, it's really cool where like the professor's in the cave and you can see time skipping like around him as well. Like it's a really cool concept and it makes kind of sense, like as much sense as it could possibly make sense, you know.
Yeah, that's it. And sort of having the thing of instantly Fry and Bender use it for no good. Straight away, as soon as they steal it, they go and get a load of diamonds. And then, well, like yeah, no, just I one thing as well that just totally cracked me up, and again, it was another joke that I don't know if they'd done previously, like in the episodes that I'd missed. But the vampire state building, that made me laugh more than it probably should have. I was really, really tickled by that.
Yeah. And a lot of the jokes, like, a lot of the funniest jokes in the show aren't the super clever, like, witty, like, science fiction, like, oh wow, that's a really smart kind of punchline. It's like the really stupid ones.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, their pun work was always so strong, always so good. To like, the first episode's like Radio City, was it Radio City Mutant Hall and stuff like that. But that vampire state building where they actually had like the Dracula's castle, and then like the waiter was just like a vampire, and it was just never explained.
Like even now, just like talking about it, like you can't help but laugh.
Oh, okay, just that whole thing of like. Fry's like, oh, we're gonna watch the sunset forever, and then the vampire waiter's like, who knows what happens in the long shadows? I was just in hysterics at that. I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
But like you say, just a dumb pun of a joke. So good.
Such a great show. Yeah. Maybe I should rewatch it as well. That would be.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
The the design, like the actual, like we were saying at the start, like the animation and the design. For going quite epic and stuff like that. Their use of CG effects, like so at the start of this episode where you had like the hyper hexa octopus thing, the ride they're all in, and then when it turns on, it's just like waving and just throwing around. I think the show did really well with that to sort of integrate those really crazy computer effect with the animation to make it work. Like, I think they had to do that for some of the more epic scenes, and I think they always did that very well, and it did make the show have I guess it's like just a grandness to it. Mm-hmm. It was always very big.
Yeah, and no matter how crazy the technology gets, or like even with like first episode with the suicide booth and like the tubes and everything, like no matter how crazy the technology got, you still had Fry at the center of all of it. Like one of us, and he's still fitting in, and he's still like pretty much the same person that he was back then. And the fact that like in spite of all this change around him, that like his human nature kind of just like stays the same.
Yeah.
Like I think he's one of the only characters aside from like Bender who never really has like anything crazy happen to him. Like his arc is basically him trying to get Leela.
Yeah.
While all these other characters, like Zoidberg, you have episodes where it shows him trying, like, as a person, like, they make fun of him so much. And then they give him an episode where he falls in love, right? And, like, he finds a girl who, like, loves him for... Oh, I don't know if that was one of the newer episodes, right?
It might, but I know there was one where they went back to Zoidberg's planet, and you got to see him at, like, during mating season and all that, like...
Oh, man, there's a great episode where Zoidberg... It's like a City Lights kind of thing. Where Zoidberg falls in love with a flower girl who can't smell his like odor or something. And it's like you have these really sweet episodes, or like the ones with Amy's parents, right? And you like connect with her kind of plight, and like they find really universal kind of concepts within these like this crazy wacky like universe that they've set up.
Yeah, no, very much so. Like it would be very easy to sort of just go, hey, this show's set in the future. Here's some wacky technology, ooh, lasers and time travel and shit. But it's good that, like you say, by the end of the show, you do have a very strong idea of who these characters are and why they are the way that they are. Mm-hmm. That makes any sense. Like, you get to see Hermes' home life and some of his past. You get
his limbo championships.
His limbo championships. Oh, genius. They really dig in on characters and they make it really good. And I mean, obviously, there's so much other stuff to talk about. Obviously, like I was, it was a shame that in this first episode and last episode there was an appearance. Well, there was sort of an appearance by Zach Brannigan because I think he just falls out of a cab frozen.
Oh yeah.
But like he was always just such a ridiculously good character. Like the idea of, I think I read there was a thing and it was like he's supposed to be like a spoof of Captain Kirk. But it's the idea of if William Shatner was a space captain, was a starship captain, not Kirk, just William Shatner, which I think is genius.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, and his character, oh my god, just so many great one-liners to come out of him. Like, and the show itself, like how many like memes or like just common phrases have come from the show itself. Now that I'm thinking about it, like
Yeah, because there is that thing of like so many good characters with catchphrases that would like I always loved Morbo, the alien newsreader. And it's like puny humans. I just always loved
and the
that
blonde
character.
anchor just ignoring his threats.
Yeah, and now the sports. Just like that was genius. And obviously, Zap Brannigan and Kiff and Valor and Champagan and all that stuff and Brannigan's Law. Is it Brannigan's Law is like Brannigan's love, hard and fast. Such a good show. Right, so I did a poll on Twitter and I asked everyone what is the best piece of technology that comes out of Futurama, and the options were the heads in jars, travel tubes, suicide booths, or the what if machine. Now the what if machine won, but second was suicide booths with quite a lot of votes.
That's kind of sad.
That's terrifying, isn't it? Like, when I put the poll up, it went on and instantaneously someone voted suicide booth.
Oh no.
Just straight away. And I do a poll like, oh god, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. And it was, I don't know if you follow him, Metal Loud, I think is at Metal Loud. I don't know his name saying that. And he sort of got in touch and just said, oh yeah, no, that was the one that made me laugh. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Because that's what I do.
Yeah, if you voted suicide booth, reach out.
Yeah, that's it, find help. Because I voted the what if machine. I thought the what if machine was great. But did you vote for heads in jars?
Heads in jars, yeah. Think about the knowledge, like all that knowledge we could have.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, this, 2016 being the year that it's been, it would be amazing just to have that thing of be able to keep these people, be able to keep Prince, keep Bowie, keep Victoria Wood, keep Vsauce, obviously just died, and God, if I had to list everyone who died this year, I would be here forever.
Devastating, yeah.
It's been an awful year for that. But yeah, I thought travel tubes would win. I thought that would be, us as lazy millennials, I thought we'd be all over that. Just
travel tubes are kind of terrifying.
Well, yeah.
Like, how would they ever
Also
test
true.
that?
Yeah, it should just be convicts. Just put them all in. People on death row, just fire them out. Oh god, that's not said that out loud. But yeah, no, I think because they were just four sort of picked off the top of my head. Are there any other technologies that were used in Futurama that you would like to see in the modern world?
I think I always loved the space travel and the different worlds and all of that. Like in the second episode, they go to the moon. They're like, oh, the moon's pretty lame, and it's all pretty lame to think about it. Yeah, I think that'd be so super cool, and the development of space pirates and
space gangsters
and
space monsters.
finding God literally.
Yeah, oh, that episode's brilliant as well. Yeah, there's one of that. There's an episode that's the episode where it's the monks and they're listening for God, and they're they've got it's the big satellite, and they're kind of trying to find God, and the head monk is talking to one of the young ones, and the young one is like, but sir, maybe God was within us the entire time. And the head monk's like, oh, really? A solution that doesn't involve a giant satellite dish? Get back to work. that again, just genius.
Oh, the professor's the sniff telescope.
Ah, yes. The sniffoscope, yeah, that's good.
See, I'm thinking of all these inventions and stuff, right? Like the time cave or whatever. And I'm like, what was it called again? And I'm thinking about it, and it's the obvious name. No, there's no way it could be that. That's just too silly. And it always is.
Yeah, the finger longerer. He's just got the big long finger. That is.
Wasn't there a fake nose thing or something made out of radioactive waste?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think the time button would be mine. I think the time button now. I think maybe it's just fresh in my mind. I think that's got some legs just to 10 seconds. As long as I don't jump off anything, I'd be fine. And that'd be a fun
Or
one.
step on it, yeah.
Or step on it, yeah. There's a weird thing that had never occurred to me, and I was doing some research for this episode, and I found this. There's a TV show in England called Red Dwarf, if you've ever heard of it. And there was I kept seeing this over and over again, this idea that Futurama is an American version of Red Dwarf. And it's not 100% true, but it is quite nearly there. So Red Dwarf it's set in the future, and it's set on this giant spaceship called the Red Dwarf, which is a mining vessel. And on board, you've got this character called Lister. who's like, he's from Liverpool and he's a bit of a slob and he's just there just to, he's the lowest ranking member of the ship. And then his sort of partner is Rimmer, who is just like a stuck up dickhead. And the idea is like, I think it's something like there's 1,068 people on the ship, and Lister's rank is 1,068 and Rimmer's is 1,067. But Rimmer wants to be an officer and Lister just doesn't care. And what happens is Lister's smuggled a pregnant cat on board that he bought on like Jupiter or whatever. And he gets caught and the captain says to him, right, you can give us the cat, who we will have to vivisect and cut open, or you can forfeit the rest of your wages and go into stasis until we get back to Earth. So he chooses stasis, goes to sleep, and then when he wakes up, he goes out and he can't find the crew, and the computer says to him, oh, when you went to sleep, there was a huge radiation leak, and it's killed the entire crew, and I've had to leave you asleep for 3 million years.
Wow.
And that's sort of how it starts, and the rest of the show, and then it's like, the cat had its babies, and over 3 million years, the cats have evolved into people, so there's a cat on board the ship that's a man. They find a robot, and Rimmer is brought back as a hologram in order to keep Lister sane, even though Lister hates him. But it's like, oh, he's the person you spoke to the most, so he's the person we brought back.
Okay.
And then the show is sort of like them on these like ragtag spaceships just trying to find their way back to Earth. And it does have a sort of Futurama thing in the sense of, obviously, it's a comedy, and it has that sort of... like they will introduce like mad technology now and again, like time travel was part of it and all these different mad concepts. And it's interesting. It would be definitely an interesting one that I'd like to see someone like an American have a take on it, because it is very English. It's very it's just a very English show. Like each season's only 6 episodes long, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But it's good. I mean, it came out in the 80s, and it came out in the 80s and it ran for like a good 8 years, and then it stopped for a bit, then it came back and it wasn't very good, then it went away, then it came back and it was great, and now the 11th season's going to start next year.
Oh, it's still running?
It's still running. Wow. Yeah. It has this ridiculous fan base in England. Like I can't even, it's sort of like it's sort of like English Star Trek, but like very, very lo-fi, and more like it doesn't have the whole thing of like, strict rules and regulations and stuff. It's just these 4 idiots just making their way through space.
There's this recurring...
But it's good.
This recurring theme of like, the idiot with the really good heart who kind of...
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and that's...
Gets a second chance.
That's Lister, like... Yeah, that's very much so, because he is like... He's the lowest of the low, and then he goes into stasis, and when he comes out, he's the last human alive. And then suddenly he is the future of the human race, and then they kind of go from there. And it has all like parallel universes and alien. Well, it's never aliens. They're always genetically engineered life forms. It's always Gelfs. Like they didn't have aliens. They just had all these things that like the human race had created all these monsters by accident, and then they just spread out across the galaxy. But yeah, it's a really cool show, and I kept reading that and it made me think of it. So it's like, okay, well, I'll put that out there, and maybe Jason will find his way to watching the first episode of Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Then can come back to me and say, this show that was made 16 years before my birth, not great. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe. I should...
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like something I'd dig.
It might have aged like milk, you know what I mean? But we'll see. Okay, so, final thoughts. Anything about Futurama that you think we've missed? Anything about these episodes that you'd like to mention or bring up?
Okay, so we were talking about similar shows, and I think the character structure that kind of Futurama has. Have you seen Archer? By any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the same cast of characters, right? Like
that's very
like
true.
Fry's Archer, Leela, Lana, Pam is Bender. Like
Pam is Bender.
You have the
yeah,
crazy scientist, the accountant. Like it's very interesting that the structure that Futurama kind of started. Was it like the first? Like I know it's parodying something, but still like.
But I mean, it is sort of like I mean, if you had to break Futurama down into sort of like a sitcom category, it would be, I guess it's a workplace comedy.
Oh yeah.
At its center, and so is Archer. Like I think it's cool that they have like, I mean, Futurama and Archer very much have that idea of like, oh yeah, they're workplace comedies, but even the very idea of their workplace is very heightened and insane. Obviously a futuristic delivery company, an international spy organization, whatever. That's very good. I'd never made that connection before. That's very good.
I think I saw like a comparison chart for it or something recently. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. And I really like the idea of them being part of a delivery company. Like it gives them the reach to go and just, like the package is different every time, like the destination and like the circumstances of each planet just make for like these episodes that all feel so different from each other,
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, that's definitely a big comparison with Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do have that thing of Doctor Who where, it can be a Western one week, it can be an aliens take the next week, it can be a murder mystery, and so on. And Futurama definitely did well with that, where they could just go, if the writers came up with a plot, they then just needed to invent a planet where that plot would work best and just send them there.
Yeah.
Because they never really delivered the things they needed to deliver. They just needed to be in places for the plot to start, which was good.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what about you? Any final thoughts?
I think after watching these two, I'm going to go back in and catch up where I left off, kind of go from season 6 and get back into it, because it's interesting to sort of like, I guess a sort of another comparison or a modern comparison would be Rick and Morty. In the sense of like not set in the future, but it has that sort of weird technology thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Futurama is less aggressive than Rick and Morty, I would say. I do enjoy Rick and Morty, but it is quite aggressively adult and aggressively dark.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Futurama, like you say, at its core, if Fry is the core of the show, it's very sweet. It's very well-meaning.
Yeah.
It
a lot of hope.
Yeah, like Fry's sweet and stupid, but he has certain morals to a point. And his main sort of focus is, his love for Leela and how that... And the show does well to not keep that as a sort of like Sam and Diane thing. It does grow, and you can, by the time they do sort of get together, you can see why. It's not just a sense of like, oh, because of the two characters on the show, let's do it. He does do... like one of my favourite episodes, and I guess it was originally like the last episode, was the Holophoner one, with he gets the devil's hands.
Oh, yeah.
And originally that was the series finale until they made the movies, and then Into the Wild Blue Yonder, I think, was the next season finale, and so on. Mm-hmm. But like that episode where he's playing like the opera, and it's for her, and then at the end, like, he's packing up and she's the only one left in the audience. And I think they do well to sort of make that a legitimate sort of romance. Mm-hmm. I think they always did that very well.
Yeah, or like the episode where he eats the gas station egg sandwich,
Again, another episode that I love.
Yeah. And it's just these episodes of him kind of going above and beyond to like, try and get her to fall in love with him, but realizing that it's not really like him that she's falling for, It's such a sweet concept.
Yeah, because they do that, like, time keeps on skipping. Again, another fantastic episode where time keeps jumping forward, like, randomly, and they have no recollection of the jumps. And at the end, it's sort of like when they're going to blow up the black hole, and he cannot work out why she's fallen in love with him, mm-hmm. or how he's got her to fall in love. And he sees that he's arranged, a bunch of planets into a love note for her, and then the black hole consumes them.
Dude.
Like, oh, come on, so close.
Oh, yeah, that was frustrating. Very emotional as well. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely, I think Futurama were not ashamed to sort of wear their emotions on their sleeves and go big. Mm-hmm. They would go, like we said before, with Seymour and the episode with Philip J. Fry and that, and just sort of, and make it work, because it's quite cheesy, but it's just the right level of cheesy. Mm-hmm. It's heartstring tugging.
Yeah, and no other animated show's really done that for me, except maybe BoJack Horseman, really.
Yeah, I mean, BoJack,
that's a whole different...
the last season of BoJack. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different thing. Like, when we were watching, me and my wife watching the last season of BoJack, we were both in jobs we hated, and we're just sort of like, we'd had a conversation before an episode where we were like, what are we doing? What's the future hold and all this, and we're sort of like trying to work things out. And then we watched BoJack, and BoJack was talking about the same thing. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is too real. I can't handle this. This talking horse is telling me my life. I can't handle it.
Yeah, it's always the shows that detach themselves from reality the most that really like find a way to hammer in that.
Yeah, no, that's very true, because you do sort of see that thing of like, you put like a plane of glass between you and the character, like, oh well, Fry can't have the experiences I'm having because he's a delivery boy in the future. Mm-hmm. But then he does have like, I remember watching the show in university where I did have like unrequited love with this girl, and seeing him and Leela and being like, oh yeah, dude, I get it, man, I know what this is like. But being like, our circumstances so different from each other, but the writers being able to find that just core idea and making it work. It's very, very good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Jason, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jason of Ooi, of OOI. And I write for audiences everywhere and the playlist. So I get
Of course you write for the playlist.
yeah, so I get stuff published on there sometimes, movie reviews mostly. So yeah.
Fantastic. You can find me at First to Last Pod on Twitter, or email me at fromfirsttolastpodcast@gmail.com. Like Jason, you can find my writing at audienceeverywhere.net, and that's really it. Jason, thank you for coming on. As your, if this was your first podcast, you did really well, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was a great experience. I had a lot of fun.
Good. We look forward to having you on again.
Have a good one.
Thanks, man. Well, my name's Sean Fallon. This has been From First to Last. Goodbye.
Ooi and I.